Welcome, Prophet.
Welcome, Professor. How are we today?
Everything's very well, thank you.
Did you have a good Easter?
Easter was great. Thank you. And yourself?
Very good, thank you.
Excellent stuff. So, topic of today's show is the recent change of law in France, the prostitution laws, which has made it illegal for men to purchase sex, but legal for prostitutes to sell it. So that's the subject of today's show.
So, if I hear you right, it's illegal for a man to purchase it, but it's legal for a woman to sell it.
That's correct.
That sounds like an oxymoron to me. What, are the women going to sell it to each other?
It's a very interesting one, and I have looked into this a little bit, and the Socialist MP Maud Olivia is behind the bill that she believes will not only protect victims of the sex trade and help authorities get a grip on human trafficking, but also educate young people on the dark side of prostitution. Prostitution is violence, says Olivia. The goal is to diminish prostitution, protect prostitutes who want to quit, and change mentalities. Her comments have angered prostitutes.
This is very surprising, Vive la France, freedom and, human rights, these sorts of things, the things that the French people hold very dear to their hearts. Many people have fought and died for those principles. I mean, they're on their fifth republic. They cut their heads off when the leaders try and take away their rights. Very surprising for me to hear this, that a country that quite literally defines itself on liberties, human rights, choices, life choices, would be imposing on its populace a dark age way of thinking. It's all right to say protect the people, but as we all know, when you outlaw something, it doesn't matter whether it's prostitution, alcohol, drugs, gambling, when you outlaw it, only outlaws have it. It attracts a very large criminal element because there's power and, of course, there's money involved in it.
Excellent points. Al Capone, I just watched a documentary about him last night, and it was fascinating. Back in the era of Prohibition, Al Capone became very powerful. Bootlegging, and he was into standoving, killed a lot of people, and essentially he was providing people with what they wanted. All right?
Particularly politicians.
This is it. Now, of course, whenever you make something illegal, it will attract the criminal element. Prices go up, and that attracts criminals, basically. And I think that what France has done is a move back into the dark ages. But if you look at the MPs who introduced this law, especially Maud Olivia is on the record as being a feminist and standing up for women's rights. And, I think
this is taking away women's rights.
This was
their right
to sell their body
as they see fit with their own flesh and blood.
And we often hear from feminists that my body, my choice, and this has taken that away from women, which is why you've got a lot of prostitutes who are up in arms about this and angered about it. Now, I think it's worthwhile noting that Maud Olivia has authority power. She is a member of the government and she has an official position. She's a powerful woman. Now, one might also argue that prostitutes have power. They have the power, generally speaking, of youth and beauty, which is power over men. Now, it might be argued that Maud Olivia has a different kind of power, and
she has the power to take away power.
That's true, but she doesn't have the same power that, say, prostitutes have over men. Perhaps it could be argued that she doesn't have the youth and beauty power that prostitutes have, but she has taken away, by introducing these laws, prostitutes' ability to, ply their trade and have that power over men. Now, I find it interesting that when women get into power, that they pass laws and introduce things like this, which limit men's freedom, and this is and other women's freedom too.
I don't think you can separate this on gender. I think freedoms and the right to choose is being taken away equally from men and women, whether they be French citizens, European citizens, visitors, tourists. One of my heroes in this world is Oscar Wilde, and he has a very famous quote: "The more dysfunctional a government and hence society, the more functional the sex industry." And I'm sure he sampled plenty of it himself in his own time.
Sure, he did.
Dysfunctional governments tend to not only inhibit but suppress populations. Regimes, martial law style governments, things like that. They rule with terror and fear and suppress any freedom of choice in the populace at large, right down to the choice of leaving the country or staying. They take that choice away from them as well. This is a return to the Dark Ages. If we look at this wonderful state, Victoria, in Australia, where we live in, during the course of my lifetime, I have watched many changes to sex industry laws in Victoria. When I was a kid, there was of course, sex industry is present in Victoria, in especially in the large cities, as it is in every other large city in the world.
It should be noted that prostitution is legal in Victoria, Australia, but it is what's the word? It's legislated.
It's legislated and regulated.
Regulated. That's it.
There is still many things about it that are illegal, such as street prostitution,
advertising, for sex workers.
Those kinds of things. But however, it's a regulated and a highly regulated industry.
Yep.
It takes place on licensed premises. Those sorts of things.
Which, in my opinion, is the way to do it properly.
I don't think, if you remove the word "my opinion," I will agree with you, Clarke. I think it's just the way to do it.
Yeah.
During the course of my lifetime, I've watched it transition from from street prostitution, back alleys, seedy parts of a few certain suburbs in Melbourne, and it's now in licensed, regulated premises where the ladies that perform this work have to have health checks, background checks. They have healthcare, insurances, they pay their taxes, those sorts of things. The establishment has to be properly run, has to meet health standards, clean towels, those sorts of things. And I've watched this during the course of my lifetime. We no longer have a group of heroin addicts working the streets of Melbourne trying to make a living out of this. It's become a far more honourable profession with little to no criminal element, and if the authorities are tipped off that there's drugs or illegal workers or things like that, they act on it very fast. As a result of this, our streets are safer. There's a lot less. There's less bodies that show up in back alleys. Those sorts of things, and I suppose above all, it's a lot safer for the ladies that have chosen to work in this industry. And I think that's really the nuts and bolts of it. It's about removing the harm that human beings can do to another when they believe they hold the balance of power.
Yep. Exactly right. And Dennis Hoff, who is the owner of the Bunny Ranch in Nevada in the United States, which is one of the places which has got legal prostitution, one of the few in America, he gave a speech at Oxford University. He was invited to speak, and he echoed many of the ideas and thoughts that you've just talked about. And I'm providing a link to his speech in the section for this video, so that you can check it out. Our viewers can check out the Dennis Hoff's speech, which is fascinating. And John Stossel also interviewed Mr. Hoff at the Bunny Ranch, and that was another interview which was fascinating, which I'm also providing a link to. But it's an interesting topic that here's a person who is arguably a pimp, who owns a legal brothel, and he has done it for 20 odd years, and he believes that's the way to go. You regulate it and you remove the criminal element, and the women pay the taxes, and it provides a safe environment for everyone who is interested in paying for sex, and the service providers themselves.
It's human beings. We're predictably unpredictable, and there are many things that take place in societies. You only have to look at what goes on in a society during wartime. Anything goes, right? Because there's no consequences. The law and order is out the window. People go, okay, well, I can get away with that. I'll do it. So hence, in times of war, things like revenge killings, rape, murder, blackmail, all that kind of thing is rampant. You wouldn't want to be you wouldn't want to have been a highly attractive 21-year-old girl on the streets of Berlin at the closing of World War II. Mm. And what tends to happen with human behaviour is there is only really one reason why people don't do the wrong thing, and that's because justice will be served and you will be faced to man up and serve your time or whatever it is.
Long arm of the law and fear of consequences.
Fear of consequences. Now, one of the biggest problems with unregulated prostitution is it brings out this primal animal behaviour in people where they believe that, well, it's only a sex worker, I can do whatever I want. When in reality, that individual, whether they be male or female or transgender, has every right that every other human being in the society has and deserves. And operating the sex industry and prostitution in a regulated manner, in a regulated environment, licensed premises, that kind of overall umbrella stops people saying, I can do whatever I want. And when I say people, I'm talking clients, I'm talking other sex workers, I'm talking brothel owners, even right down to the law.
Yep.
The police can't walk into a brothel in Victoria and say, where's my protection money? Because there's nothing to protect. It's legal.
Exactly right. And, I'm a visitor to Thailand, to Pattaya, and prostitution is illegal in Thailand. And although it is a flourishing trade, and a lot of people look the other way.
How can something that's illegal be about 50% of the economy?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? But, the brothel owners over there, the bar owners,
they all pay protection money.
They do pay protection money to the police. There is corruption amongst the police over there. And it's problematic, although I think that Thailand's an interesting one. I don't want to sort of get off topic with that, but, the way the industry operates over there in an illegal environment, you wouldn't even think that it was illegal, if you pay a visit to Thailand. compared to, say, to Melbourne, Victoria, where it is legal. I'm seeing it everywhere on the streets in places like Pattaya. It's very sort of confronting at
But
first, whereas you don't see that in Melbourne. It's all sort of behind closed doors and legalised brothels.
But this issue seems to be no different than many other issues in society. There's an incredible amount of irony that goes on. There's a lot of taboo around prostitution and sex work, paid for pleasure that's paid for. One of the things I find really ironic is you never seem to meet anyone that has ever done this, has ever paid for sex or pleasure.
Taboo.
Yet it's a very, very large industry. How is that possible, that no one knows anyone that's ever indulged in it?
It's interesting. It's a taboo in society. A lot of people don't like to talk about it. Anytime you have any kind of taboo, you have this sort of...
it upsets people's belief systems.
That's right, and you have this sort of silence surrounding the topic. But I'd like to run a couple of things by the way. I posted a couple of thoughts on my Facebook page, and if I could read it now. The people who keep prostitutes in business arguably are married women. The majority of men who visit prostitutes are married men. This is a well-known fact. Men have a higher sex drive than women and over 20 times as much testosterone. Men's primary fantasy and interest is sex and sexual variety, whilst a woman's primary fantasy and interest is security. How would women react if it was made illegal for them to marry for security? To make it illegal for them to pursue their primary interests of home, security and family, it would be absurd to make marriage illegal, which gives so many women the security they desire. Is it not equally absurd to make prostitution illegal and deny men their primary fantasy of sex? Feminists love to talk about how it's their body, their choice, but this decision, in my view, takes away women's and men's choice to prostitute themselves should they want to, and criminalises men's primary fantasy and interest. And then I talk about Al Capone and his life of crime and what Prohibition did in the United States.
It destroyed the society.
This is it.
And it actually created a dragon that had to be dealt with, which was obviously the underworld and the criminal element and the power struggles that were going on within. It's interesting because I read a very interesting article about the end of Prohibition, and when it all came to an end, the President of the United States sat down and enjoyed a drink with his close confidants, and the first thing that he said was, "I can enjoy this without worrying about who I'm keeping in business."
Yeah.
And Prohibition doesn't work. It should be obvious at this stage of human development that it doesn't work. You make it illegal, it creates a fascination for it. I'm not saying that it whether it be alcohol, drugs, gambling, prostitution, and there's many other vices as well. I'm not saying that it should be made compulsory. If a person chooses, so be it. But what tends to happen with all of these, anything to do with an addiction, is if you try and stop it, it is the worst thing that you can do.
Yeah.
It just creates a lot of money and a lot of power and a lot of power struggles around this chemical or this activity that in many ways is more valuable to the human being than the oxygen they breathe.
Yep. Completely agree.
But getting back to the issue with France, it is very, very surprising that a country that is built on freedom and human rights would be returning to Dark Age thinking.
This decision I find disturbing. And I find it disturbing and disheartening because I believe in equality. However, it seems to me when women achieve a degree of power, like Maud Olivia has, that this is the consequence, where freedom will be taken away from men as well as other women. Now, I just find that thought so disturbing. And I think France as a country, now, if you look, the other thing is I look forward, I must say, to meeting more French men over in Pattaya, and I think it will happen. I looked up the visitor statistics to Thailand, and Thailand attracts over 54,000 French people. It would be interesting to find out the percentage of men per year that are travelling from France to Thailand, but I suspect it will attract more French men in the future.
I think what will happen is the behaviour of the clientele in France, predominantly men, obviously, I don't think their behaviour will change. They will source the product that they so desperately need through different avenues. Obviously, illegally is one of them. It's not going to stop street prostitution on the streets of Paris. It's not going to happen. It's going to be. It's been there for a couple of thousand years, and it's going to continue. More French men will become sex tourists, whether they cross the border and go to Germany, where it is fully legal, or whether they jump on a plane and fly to Thailand or other Asian countries where it's also quite well established. But it will not actually change their behaviour.
That's right.
What it will do is it will just move the problem around the globe.
Excellent point.
Right? And let's be honest about it. French men like to, they like to indulge in romance and lovemaking, those kinds of things. There's a reason why a lot of people don't understand the origins of the cosmetic industry and the fragrance industry, and there's a big reason that it's based in Paris.
Originated in Paris.
That's right. It originated in Paris. When different social diseases were quite rampant on the streets of Paris, it was affecting quite large parts of the population, everyone from King Henry VIII down. And people were looking unhealthy. So the working girls on the streets of Paris came up with a way of concealing, skin blemishes and an unhealthy look. And at the same time, they came up with a way of disguising, I guess, the unwashed smell. And of course, in modern times, we call this the cosmetic industry and the fragrance industry.
Yep.
So it's fascinating. It surprises me that the French people had something like this really should have been an issue of referendum, and it surprises me that a country that is based on highly passionate belief system on human rights would just allow a few over-the-hill leaders with their own agendas to pass laws like this.
Spot on, I think, mate. I'd like to mention that Dr. Warren Farrell, in his book Why Men Are the Way They Are, talks about the differences in between the sexes in terms of their primary and secondary fantasies. And what he talks about is that men have to give up their primary fantasy of sexual variety with young, beautiful women in order to enable women to achieve their primary fantasy of home, monogamy, children, and commitment.
Security.
And men have to make that transformation to give women what they truly want. And some men don't make that transformation. I'm I guess I'm one of them. But I find it interesting that, so we have a woman MP in power in France who's pushed these laws, and it's now been passed pushed these policies, it's been passed as a law. And isn't it interesting that the law favours, one might say, women's primary fantasy, or some women's primary fantasies? It should be noted that prostitutes, female prostitutes, have to give up a degree of their primary fantasy of home, security, monogamy, and family, given that most men probably won't, knowing what we're both men, we know what men are like. Generally speaking, we would like a woman who hasn't slept around if we want to marry that woman. So a prostitute pays a large price for that variety, which is a part of the reason that they're taking higher risks, earning more money by taking those risks. But by taking those risks and engaging in prostitution, they are foregoing marriage. And by foregoing marriage, they are giving up a large probability of obtaining wealth and security over time due to their being married and having a male partner who's, generally speaking, earning more money. And so I think that should be mentioned, that the risk that prostitutes take to earn that money up front, they are foregoing marriage opportunities.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, they're more than foregoing marriage opportunities. They are taking large personal risk, both in terms of physical health and their safety. You know, they are human beings like everybody else. They are entitled to all the rights and privileges and protections of the law like everybody else. Let's be honest about it. It would be a very difficult job. But however, many choose to do it and are rewarded for it, and that is their choice. It is not their government's choice.
Whenever governments take away individuals' freedom, I find that disturbing.
I find it more than disturbing. I find it, what can I say, backward thinking.
It is backward thinking, and governments are there to protect people from other people, but should they really be protecting people from themselves? Now, John Stossel mentions this in one of his videos, and that the link will be available. And I just find it fascinating that governments will try, if given the opportunity, to introduce legislation and laws to protect our people from themselves.
I just see this as a bad decision all round.
Yeah.
I see it as, like I said, nothing will change. There will still be a rampant sex industry in France.
Yep.
It will be on the streets. It'll be many people that will be attracted to it will be illegal workers.
Yep.
Of course, I see many power struggles and all the problems that go along with that, killings, blackmailing, all that kind of thing. I also see problems with the law. Oh, well, we won't do anything about it if you give us some money.
Yeah.
Right? I just see it as a bad decision all round. If, I suppose, like many bad decisions, it will go on for a period of time before the people say enough.
Absolutely. Completely agree with you. And we'd be very interested in what you, our viewers, think about this subject. It's generated quite a bit of interest online, generated a lot of anger with prostitutes and with many men. But we're very interested in your thoughts on this subject. It's an interesting one, controversial, one might say, especially to...
Very polarising.
Polarising, that's right. So many people tiptoe around this sort of subject, but I think it's an important one to discuss and to talk about, because here we are in the 21st century, and we've got a country that's passing, one might say, draconian laws and bringing us back into the dark ages, which is not going to change behaviour. It's just going to drive it underground and track the criminal element, the wrong types, into it. You can't change behaviour, male or female, especially when it comes to something like this. What can you say, hey?
I can't say anything. Well, why don't we revisit this topic in a month or so? We'll I'm sure we will receive some emails from our viewers with their views on it all. Why don't we revisit this in a month and reassess how it's working out, how the marketplace has adapted to these decisions,
Yep.
and we'll continue on with this discussion in about a month.
That sounds good, Prophet. So we'll leave it for this episode. We look forward to your feedback and see you on the next show.
See you later. Bye for now.